It just so happened that we have concluded our regional meeting of the regional UNDG here in Dakar, Senegal, and we have discussed the very questions that you have asked. We have agreed that we have two main challenges in the continent. Challenge number one is that how do we continue to support Africa emergence? As you know, for the last 15 years, this continent has been growing extremely fast after the last two development decades of the 1980s and the 1990s. But we know that if we continue this trend with the given structure of our economies and the given structure of inequalities, it will take us 10 to 12 more years to get to halving poverty based 1990. So yes, there is an Africa Rising narrative, but that narrative is still limited. There is work to be done. That's our challenge number one. Challenge number two is that even though we have this Africa emerging, we still have a lot of fragilities. We have fragilities in the Sahel, fragilities and vulnerabilities in the Central Africa region, fragilities and vulnerabilities in the Great Lakes, fragilities and vulnerabilities in the Horn of Africa. And some countries are going also to deep fragilities, which has implications on migrations of our youth leaving our continent, and on even radicalization, some of our youth being turned into violent extremism. So the agenda of fragility is also a very huge agenda in the continent. And we have agreed in our Dakar meeting that we have in the UN Agenda 2030 and we have in the Africa Agenda 2063 a platform to address those two mega challenges. And what is very fortunate, because Africa went to negotiate in New York for the Agenda 2030, Africa went with a common position, and then it so happened that the two agendas, Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063, are fully congruent. And in our discussion in Dakar, we even estimated that there is a ratio or probability of congruence of 80 to 90%. It means that whichever agenda we address, be it 2030 or 2063, we are indeed addressing Africa development priorities and challenges. Now, if we have to succeed as the UN, remember, as the UN development system, we wait only 20 to 25% in the financing for development in Africa. It may be limited, but it is a commanding height. If you want this to have a dent, if you want this commanding height to have an impact on Africa, we need two things. We need to keep working together. We need to keep delivering as one. And as some member states are telling us in the ECOSOC high-level dialogue, we need to be one. So that's the condition number one. Condition number two, since our commanding height is limited, as I say, 20 to 25% of the development system funding is coming from the UN system, we need to be focused. And what is very clear in our Dakar meeting is that we agree that if there is one pressure point where we should all intervene, is the area of resilience. And resilience cut across the two agendas, the Africa agenda and the world agenda, and resilience cut across the emerging agenda and then the fragility agenda. And what is great in the Dakar meeting is that we have agreed on the perimeters and parameters of what resilience should be. And we said that it's not only agriculture. It is important that we deal with food security, but it goes beyond. It does include nutrition. It does include education. It does include social cohesion. It does include social protection. It does include social contracting, being vertical and horizontal, meaning the contract among communities, what we call the horizontal contract, social contract, and the contract between societies and the state. It is because, by the way, we failed on having these strong contracts, and Central Africa epitomizes this failure, that we have all these crises. Again, resilience goes beyond that. It calls for adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And last but not least, on the economic front, it calls for having a strong fiscal space for a country. A country cannot do sustainable development without a strong fiscal space. And in Africa, the space is weak. I mean, measured in terms of the ratio between fiscal revenues and GDP, in the continent, we have a fiscal pressure of 17%. It is weak compared to what you are seeing in East and Southern Africa, East and Southern Asia. a ratio of 30%, or what you're seeing in the OECD countries, a ratio of 40%. And UNCTAD has shown empirically you would need a minimum of 24% fiscal pressure if you want to trigger sustainable financing development. To anchor is what we have agreed in Addis Ababa during the 3rd Financial International Conference on Development. So what is coming strong out of the Dakar meeting is that this definition of the parameters of resilience should be our main focus as the UN system, and we have to do it together. Again, let me congratulate ourselves, especially here in the Africa region, because we in the region, in the totality of delivering as one, 63% are in the Africa region, and 70% of our countries are delivering as one. But it's not enough. I mean, we are leading, but it's not enough. The norm has to be 100%. This should be our normal modus operandi, deliver as one if we really want to have an impact. So I am calling for all our countries to do so. And we have also an operational tool which is called the Business Operations Strategy, which helps us gain more efficiency on our delivery. For those countries that are already using the BOS, as we call it, the Business Operations Strategy, we have seen that we have a lot of gains, efficiency gains. For instance, we have seen that for each dollar invested in the BOS, we have a return of $5. And if you even drill down, look at the procurement component of the BOS, for each dollar invested in the BOS, we have savings and returns of $27.5. This is a big business opportunity, and I urge all of us, all our countries to do so. Now again, and we discussed it in Dakar, addressing Africa agenda, of course, call on a focus on countries. Countries have to lead. That's why we are supporting them to mainstream the SDGs into their national plans. And we have what we call in the UNDG, the MAPS, the mainstreaming, acceleration, and policy support strategy. So we have tools to empower you, our UN country teams, to support countries deliver on the SDGs. But it goes beyond only supporting national countries. And we agreed that there are some regional public goods that needs to be addressed. The issue of violent extremism, the issues of migration, cross-border initiatives as things that we have to do, we, the regional directors, by federating our various regional programs to support country officers deal with those regionalities. And that, I think, it is extremely critical.